figured you did. Okay, so there we go. We got it.
Looks like we're on.
Hey, Okie, Native Wellness Institute, 140 weeks. Oh my gosh. We are so very deeply appreciative of all of those of you who have wanted to heal. Those of you, if you don't want to heal, get off. No. So Oki, Nistuni Doniko, Makoyo Sokoi. That's my Blackfoot name. My English name is Theda Newbreast, and I'm just I feel the vibrancy of renewal, reclaiming, and just people blasting out their Indianness. You know how how Indians are just real Indians. So we want to welcome, and I just I'm just loving seeing my brother. I wore this shirt because of Gene Tagabon. It says hide and seek champion, because those of you who have been listening to, Gene and I go into the woods, and sometimes you never see it, we don't come back. So anyway, it's me and Gene today. So I'm coming to you live from Lower St. Mary's. They call it Lakes Inside because this is where they used to have all the ceremonies for centuries, eh? And it's a frozen lake, and I'm on the Blackfeet Reservation. And I'm just honored, just really honored to come and visit with you. Our sessions this month is just kind of visiting with Uncle and Auntie. So I'll pass it to you, Gene. What you doing, Gene?
Hey, it's really good to be here. It seems like I've been forever since I've been on one of these power hours, and again, we started the power hours because of the pandemic, knowing that the trauma that was going on. And so we just wanted to have a solution for those who are out there, for the people, and just to bring some good feeling, some good healing, and some comfort somehow, some way, and just to know that we're out there listening while we're all going through this, and so it's great to be on here with you, Theta. I love the shirt. I love that shirt, and hide and seek champion, man. And sometimes that's how I feel, that hide and seek. I just want to go out there and hide and do my own thing too. So it's good to be here. My name's Gene Tagaban with Native Wellness Institute. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My Tlingit name is Gayal. I'm of the Duckdane Ton clan up in Alaska, the child of a Wishkatan Eagle Shark clan. I'm here on the land of the Puyallup people and the territories of the Coast Salish. And I tell people, in the shadow of Mount Tahoma, people know it as Mount Rainier, but the traditional name is Mount Tahoma, where the waters originate from. As coming into this new time, new year, new awakening, people are making new plans, whatever that is, and some people are sticking to their old plans because it's working for them, which is great. Whatever, take a look at what's going on in 2022. If it was working for you, continue doing that. But if it wasn't, it's a time to kind of take a look and adjust, not to make any huge, big changes, but just make those small shifts, those small adjustments, which leads to larger things. And so it's really good to be here, Theta, and here we are again.
I know, Gene, maybe I could we call this visiting, so I'm just gonna visit with you. I'm one of those Indians that they call us hard nosed because we get skeptical when we see stuff like hippies and crystals and stuff like that. And but during the pandemic, I learned and I got medicine from crystals. And so one of the things about, maybe 15 years ago, one of my several of my elders were saying, hey, have you got your tarot cards read? And then I was like, okay, But like I just get skeptical, but long story is it all depends on who's reading the cards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll just blast her out there. Deb Eli, who I think is just a natural healer. And I think her job now, she's head of family services at Picani at Brockett. But she's always read my cards. And Jean, this is the thing. She's all these years 80% correct. And it's
Yeah.
not like, and you get to ask a question. So I was really praying, and I get tender hearted because I was trying to see which question I should ask. And so it ended up being like my question was, how do I do more of my own self-healing? And then how can I bring that to other people's healing? Just plain and simple. And so that was the question. And we were in a ceremony kind of like for I don't know, 7 hours because there was other leadership there. Gail strikes at the gun. She's the first chief of Picani. And those of you know, I come from the Blackfoot Confederacy. So half my relatives are up there. And I hadn't got to see them since 2019 till the day before yesterday. But what I wanted to visit with you is keep an open heart. In this year, so much has transformed. Keep an open heart of different ways of self-care and healing. And just keep that open heart, and pray with anybody as long as they're praying. Smudge and don't judge how they're praying. Just pray with them. Because however, because in that state of energy when we're praying, and you'll see a lot of elders close their eyes or they'll look up, or they'll go some. I always have to close my eyes because my eyes deceive me. And so I have to close. I except like telepathic with animals and stuff and trees, but keep an open heart. And so I'll just one of the things I learned when she was we smudged, we visited, and we ate a big elk steak to kind of get ready before the reading. And the first card, and so I'll just talk about that, Jean, and then I'd like to hear any of your response or what you want to visit about. But the first card, it was a card that its significance is to take baby steps. And so it was like, just like take baby steps to whatever I do in this year or forward. And so I was thinking about that because like, how like everybody says, oh, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to blah, 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 I'm gonna, whatever, we always think these things, and they say by February, you're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
And then I loved, yesterday they asked NWI to be on Native Calling, and DJ Vanis was talking about men that go and work out really hard for 2 hours and they can't move the next day. He said your baby steps should be like, just go for a 10-minute walk. The first baby step of getting, back in. But so I've been intentionally, Jean, and I know you and I always talk about pacing. I even when I get up, like sometimes when I was younger, it'll be an alarm. I don't get up by an alarm usually, but I wake up slowly. Because before I would just jump out of bed and start going, getting ready. And no, so I'm taking that, I'm sharing that with you, because take baby steps. Don't make big changes. Don't sell your house and get a divorce or whatever. You could do that. That is a choice,
Yeah.
But and be gentle with yourself, because life is not an emergency. Life is not an emergency. And if you think about all the good things that come, it's a little increment at a time. a little baby step at a time. So what you thinking, Gene?
Hey, when you're talking about that, Theta, I'm just reminded about, again, taking those small steps and those small shifts. Um, oftentimes I mention to people, it's like, I'm sitting in this chair right now, and we could be sitting in a chair. You're sitting in the chair with wherever you're at, maybe in your car seat, you're driving, and you become uncomfortable. And then what we do is we shift our weight just a little bit. And if we shift our weight just that little bit, we can sit in that chair all day. And so that's what we're, just to make a little shift, but like Theta said, maybe it is time. Maybe you've been like waiting, time to get out of this relationship, sell the house, and those things. Maybe that's it. Maybe but most of us, it's to take those little shifts, and as you're talking about that too, is what's your body telling you? What is your body telling you? When I'm not moving enough, my knees start to ache. And so that tells me that I need to do something. I need to move. And usually when that happens, I'm a bike rider. And so I'll go out and ride my bike. And just that one bike ride helps my knees, helps my knees move, lubricate, and such. Yeah, I'm a skier as well. And yesterday I was on the mountain up there at and spent the day up there on the mountain, and up and down that mountain pretty much most of the day yesterday. And I was really grateful at 58 years old that I could still do that I can do those things. And but the thing is, it's like, and is this stuff that I discovered on my own? You know what? I listened to the advice of my mother. I listened to our elders kept telling us, and there's an elder out there. We talk about that new age stuff, Theta. The crystals, the tarot cards. I mean, that's actually old school stuff. But people have brought it in because we're so used to this. The new way is actually, and I'm going to say it, the Christian, religious, Catholic, all those things, that's the new way of doing things. The old way is our traditional ways. That's the old way. This new age stuff is all that other stuff. And so our old ways, the Cherokee, the Schlagi people, we used crystals, we used those things of the land, because we knew they generated energy, and how we read the land itself is like almost like reading the tarot cards, and we read the land, we read these things. This is the old knowledge, and so that's when people turn it around and say, oh, this is new age stuff, but it gets distorted because people bring their own stuff into it and make up things like that, and so it's those so those old things that what are those? And again, as I started out earlier, what worked for you in 2022, take that into this new year with you. But if you need to make that little shift, whatever it is, for instance, my little shift is I gotta stop eating so much sugar. I love cookies. I do. I love cookies. I love that stuff. And the thing is, as I age, I just can't do that anymore. I just can't do it, because my system is different, man. And and Theta, as we're getting older, I got to say this, Theta. I'm looking at you, and you sat back, and as you sat back, I saw your mother.
Oh.
I saw your mother, and your mother, she's, bless her, and she's just, the sacredness of her. But as we age, we start to appreciate the small things, eh? A comfortable chair, some tea, and company, a smile, or sometimes it's just quiet, whatever it is, those small things that we appreciate. And I'm asking people out there to don't wait till you get older to start appreciating these things. when you're younger, have fun, go out there, and experience and do these things. But at the same time, stop, the value of just that whole phrase, stop and smell the roses.
Mm. Mhm.
Stop and smell the roses. I was
Mm.
thinking, there's one other thing that I want to that's on my mind. But what's on my mind too is, the losses that we've experienced.
Mhm.
So many losses, but the gifts that they left us. Like, I recently lost my father, but the gift that he left us was his strength, his discipline. Those things, that who he was, his integrity of his love for his family. Those are gifts. And I really appreciate those things that he left, and cousins, aunties, and that, what are these gifts that those who are no longer here, what are those gifts they left you?
Mhm.
And I even want to say that, gosh, and some of you are going to take this wrong, but that son of a bitch, or whoever, that male or female, old or young, who just was just that a-hole in your life, they left you a gift. It may have been like, I don't want to be like that, a role model of someone not to be like, or how not to be like.
Ah,
That's actually a gift,
ah.
and so there's those things too. I've been really thinking about that lately too,
Ah.
and so and so there's a few things. I got many things I could talk about, Theta, too. And so it's like,
No, but Gene, no, I'm just listening to you. I'm with you because, even just being on this journey, our whole team with you, with your parents, and then the rest of our team and their parents.
yeah,
And what you talked about is legacy. So I've been thinking along that, it's that some will say it's handing the baton, it's knowing, because sometimes with elders, a lot of the ones that have helped me over the last 67 years, um they don't say nothing unless you ask.
yeah,
Unless you ask, they just watch you. So, like, when I was experiencing life, because they want you to experience life, they don't want to run in front of you and rescue you. That's like codependency. They don't want to control. Or I had one elder say to me yesterday that it was she said, I made a mistake with my son, in his 40s now, because I gave him everything. I gave him everything. And I go, yeah. So then let's talk about the legacy of earning things. Because I've been thinking about that lately, like, with big things like headdresses, or earning the right to have a new automobile, or rebuild an automobile, or having the right to go pick sweetgrass, or a transfer right, because here you need to whoever teaches that legacy. But Gene, it was I just saw a snippet of Barbara Walters, who in the Big America we
mhm,
lost her. And right before we lost her, they surprised her on The View, and they had like 12 women that she had influenced and followed in her steps. And I'll just name one of them, Oprah Winfrey. And so Oprah goes, yeah, Barbara, she said, when I first went on the air, I didn't know how to act. I mean, like, here we are, just at least we comb our hair, or it looks like I could comb your hair, Gene, but I'll let Ruby do that. But
I know
I
I'm going to fix my hair here. Yeah,
I know. So this is what Barbara Walters said. She said, yes, I was so nervous the first time I went on. And she said, I was so nervous. And so I said, how would Barbara Walters do this? And she
yeah,
would sit like this, and she would hold her hands like this. And so they each just said they got their inroad. That's why, to keep the open heart, they got their inroad by watching someone they admire and appreciate. and that legacy, but whatever the legacy is, I mean, I could just I hear so many things that your father did and how smart and intellectual. I mean, accountant, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then what he appreciated, and then how I saw his truck. It was so clean. And for me, that's really when I see a clean truck, I never see a clean truck because mine's like a Travoy. I got food, extra stuff. I mean, and I say, because my father was the same way. And it was positive he picked up from boarding school is to have things organized. So they were always all organized, or they had a rubber band around them, or there was order. There was some kind of order. So sometimes, so what is that legacy? So I've been, and this is just how I'm thinking now that, I kind of want to hang around till I'm about 90. Like I've said that before. So I'm investing, teaching and investing my knowledge with people that will carry it on. So like, I'm not, and I never want to judge anyone's journey, because you never know that, they can be in jail 1 minute and transform and be the president, or they could be the president and go to jail.
Yeah.
There's all these kind of transformations, but so I've been, so I'll name one. She's, and I married her and her wife this last July. And I just met her through BIPOC and Equity Montana program. But I married them, the two women, and their two children. So we married four. And it was spontaneous. And, I invited some of our elders and some of our Two-Spirit and some sobriety people. And we just had this beautiful ceremony. But I was thinking to myself, this year, I need to spend more time with her just in communication, in either them coming here, because it's winter, we have winter here, but visiting on the phone, or getting on, getting on a Zoom with the family, or just sending stuff. So when she was young, she was a star basketball player. And I just have to show you. So this someone had had this coat made for her. That coat.
Wow, that's nice. That's beautiful.
I know. And so what does she do? They were trying to figure out like a thank you kind of thing. We did all, and so I go, and there's just this kind of ruffled up box at the post office, and then when I opened it, I thought it was a blanket. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong, but elders have a whole bunch of blankets. I had to give all my blankets away during the and I thought, oh, wonderful, it's a blanket. But I didn't know until I got home and took it out, and it was not a blanket, it was a coat. And so that's an ask. When you do that, when you offer that, that's an ask to an elder. So I'm going to intentionally, because one of the things that she asked for, so I'm going to make communication, is she wanted to have a little visit with her two little daughters, me and her two little daughters, every Sunday, or often as possible. And so then I'm just going to so in that legacy, I'm going to invest, because those two little daughters, I'll be dead and gone, but they're like the two that we have to think of. And they're the two. So I would, tell everyone in our listening audience, who are you going to invest in that's going to, live another 50 years and get back the land? Who's gonna read the treaties and say, hey, this treaty said, or who's gonna still be when we're retired, who's going to be still doing the power hour, or going around, telling everyone they're worthy and putting on I am worthy t-shirt. You got to invest in those. And we have them, we of course we have Shailene in our Indigenous 20 something, but in your families, because sometimes not everyone has the privilege of going to healing events, but you still invest in them. It's like leaving that kind of legacy. Does that make sense, Gene? What you thinking?
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about, again, we talked about my father, and he was very orderly, and an accountant, and the more I learn about him too, is like the how what clicked for him, and what word made sense to him, and a lot of it's, again, here comes that word trauma based,
Mm.
and he did things because of that, and and I'm not going to get into that whole story of that, but that my father and the legacy of my father, that he left behind. And when we went to his memorial, people just talked about how my father didn't want anything flashy, he didn't want anything big or to that, but that's just how he was. But I remember my father at one time, he says, towards the end, maybe about a month before he passed, he's going, I don't know, what have I done? What have I done? He was talking about he was pondering his legacy and his end of his life. And I couldn't help but, that dad, you affected the state of Alaska and so many more, because he was he worked for the BIA, but he was the accountant for all the programs in BIA: housing, roads, environment, everything. He managed all the money. When people wanted something or they needed money for the project, he could find a way to get it to them. They needed a new road in their community, he'd find a way to get it for them. New houses, he'd find a way to get it for them. And so, but that was his thing, but he didn't see the bigger picture of how he influenced so many. And that's like each and every one of you. That's just like the drop of the stone in a calm pool of water, and the concentric rings just go out and out and out. So you never know who you influence or who you reach, in your work. And maybe your legacy might be, just raising your family or your children, and being that best. My mother, the biggest influence of my life, my mother, and the legacy, she was a nurse, and everything she left there, but and the drop in the, all those influences. And so what is that? And the biggest way is what is that legacy? Do you want it to be, the Dalai Lama talked about selfishness. There's wise selfishness and there's foolish selfishness. That wise selfishness, take care of yourself, take care of those around you in that good way. The foolish selfishness is being the self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
And so in our legacy, what is it that, as far as like a human being, it was Doug Modig, an elder up in Alaska. He always talks first about being a human being, a good human being. And then what kind of man do you want to be? And then, or what kind of woman do you want to be? Or what kind of mother, father, or relative do you want to be? But first, be that human being, and, first, and being that. Because there's a lot of people out there, I think about their legacy, and they were just destructive. They were destructive, and that's the legacy they left behind. So we have a choice on what our legacy we want to leave behind. Now, I want to share this one thing about a legacy of, I'm just going to call him Frank. And he was a just down and out alcoholic. He lived a few houses down the street from us. He would go out and have these alcoholic blackouts, and he would just be out there just doing kung fu, and he became the entertainment in the neighborhood, because everyone, oh, Frank's out there again. Everyone, and all the kids, everyone would go out there and watch him and things like that. And then I got to a point as a little kid, I was watching him and how he influenced me. And this is, he has no idea about this, the legacy he left for me, that when he was in a blackout, what he was doing was he was telling stories and reenacting the stories of rave and all these traditional stories in his blackouts.
Wow.
His kung fu and all this stuff. He'd be talking and clinking and everything. And this one time he even said, I'm going to go inside and get a gun. Everyone ran. He came out with a broom. He's like, but he was telling the story of him being a veteran in the war. But for some reason, as a little kid, it clicked in for me. That's what he was doing. And now myself as a storyteller.
Wow.
And the influence he had, and that legacy. And it was probably 10 years ago, where I was at a coffee shop in Anchorage, and I'm ordering coffee, and I turn around, and right behind me is Mr. Frank.
Wow.
And I looked at him in his eyes, and I said, Mr. Frank, he kind of looked at me. He was sober at the time, but alcohol destroyed his mind, his brain. So he looked at me, but he looked blankly at me, as if he knew me, but he didn't know where. And I told him that, hey, can I go buy you a cup of coffee? He goes, yeah. And then I said, I just want to say, Mr. Frank, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for, you taught me. And he had no idea. And I wasn't going to try to explain. I just said, thank you. I found out a few years after I saw him there, he passed on. But you never know what your legacy is going to be. I could have seen Mr. Frank as, this down and out, just drunk Indian. But he was more than that. He was more than that. He was a teacher for me. Yes, he was a teacher for me of what I didn't want to be. And yet, at the same time, he was a storyteller. And I realized he was telling his stories in his blackouts.
Yes. Yes, Gene. Gene, just what you're saying, and and that keeping the open heart. I've used it, and I in my human reaction, but they always say separate the person from the addiction. And separate the person, and even with my own father's alcoholism, separate my real dad, who loved me and he cherished me, from the alcoholism. And so, but then we also have to forgive, because during this pandemic, I guess it's about visiting about some forgiveness, is we have to practice forgiveness, because everybody's been in a traumatic event for 140 weeks. I mean, we don't even have to list, the capsules. I mean, like, we couldn't even go shopping. The people we've lost, we had to shift to becoming Zoom warriors. We couldn't do our jobs. All of that kind of traumatic event. And so we're all healing. So we have to give the benefit of the doubt of the person and what they have gone through in a life experience. Just like when you were saying he was doing Kung Fu, it reminded me of a similar in Berkeley, a person who was always, so it got me, but he was always doing like Tai Chi. So like one day, sometimes we would see him, we're students at UC Berkeley, and he'd be out there. And then so one day we kind of just all got in line with him, and we were just, but then what it did, it planted a seed about how important the movement of your body is intentionally. And that it's a spiritual thing when you're moving and balancing on one leg. I mean, I think when you said that, but what I'm doing right now is, in my own healing, is I'm giving everybody a chance to show me who they are now. So I can't take who they were in 2019. So I want to give them fair chance to see and like, and you said it earlier, if we still see behavior of self-centeredness, of greediness, of of a-holeness, if we
Mhm.
still see it, then we can decide, okay, I'm going to boundary, and you might even delete that person. I mean, it's not like to delete them this way. No,
Yeah.
you just press a button. You don't have to look at them no more. Anyway, but give them a benefit of the doubt, because I think this is just in my heart, in my badass auntie's heart, everybody has transformed to a better person. You just got to give them, I just saw people I've been at all the doings here, the powwows and during the holidays and stuff, and I saw the transformation of people. And so then you have to visit with them. And so that's kind of why Jean and I came today, for Native Wellness Institute, is just to visit with you. We have to spend some time this whole year visiting with everyone to see what they transform to, what they're, what they're into, and then seeing where you connect. Okay, so I'll just say, like with Gail, Strikes with a Gun, she went up to the Northwest Territories and she translated all their languages into little school books. And so this is our little school book. And she gave me a copy, and it's just basic Blackfoot, but I'm just treasuring it because, so how do we take what we learned in this last 140 weeks and share it in a good way? Because I'll just, I recommitted to practicing my language. So, and it was funny because I made my homemade flashcards, and when I was up there, she goes, "No, we made flashcards. You could get." I was like, "Oh my God, we're thinking the same." She goes, "Yeah, she's 70." She goes, "Yeah, no, you need flashcards." So because I'm like old style, and so I would say, give everyone a chance to show you who they have transformed to. And you don't know that. Don't make any assumptions. We don't know. And then just like, when I met Gail, I did not know her husband had died. I didn't know till we started visiting. And then I didn't know till I went to her home, because she told me what her first thing to heal was she couldn't stay in the house where they lived together for 27 years because it was just too much reminding. And so she transitioned and they had another house and she fixed it up and she moved there. So that was, and she goes, she said, "I'm still in shock. I'm still numb. I'm still going, in my grief." So you have to give yourself. So those of you, I really admire people who did, change location. Even if it's, to a different house, or you change location to a different bedroom. Are you decide to face, because like here we like to face the head of our bed supposed to be in the east, because then the dreams can come in easier.
Mhm.
So some people learn that, so then they move their bed, because otherwise it'll be coming in your rear end, eh? And you don't want your lessons coming there. You'd rather, it's better to have them come here in your head. I mean, so I don't know, Gene, what do you think about that transformation?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that transformation is being aware of it, but also the transformation is having the courage to face it. There's so many people out there who, during the pandemic, we had a lot of time to think. I've been calling the pandemic the that time when we look within, the long winter, because the winter time amongst the people, we call that the time to look within. And during that pandemic is the long winter. And we had a lot of time to look within, to really take a look at ourselves and society, and so many, in such a bigger picture. And that I've been reading this book and listening to Gabor Mate, and he just wrote a book called The Myth of Normal. And because what was normal is this huge myth. And then people say, I want to get back to normal, but no, but we were like, oh no, we don't know, because we didn't know what normal wasn't really working. And so what is that normal for us, and what is working? And so many times about that transformation of ourselves, we've, in the back of our minds, we think about it, but we don't have the courage to actually do it, because then people will have to look at us and see us as a different person, even if it's for the better, even if it's for the better of our family, our relationships, or our health and stuff. We get so caught up in our masks. I saw you wearing like your masks, and your Lori. We get caught up in our masks that we wear every day, and that people see it. And then if we take our masks off and we expose ourselves in the enclosures of our own house, our own room, and we take a look at us, it could be too much. So we put the mask back on. But what if we did take the masks off and actually made the transformation? And especially as we age, as I'm getting older, I'm seeing that, hell with those masks, man. It's like they don't serve me anymore. But it's really when we're at our younger stages in our life where we want to wear those masks. We see it on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and all that. Everyone's putting, puts what's, those things out there. But what is that true transformation? Who is it? You younger generations, to really take a look at, who is it you want to be? Find those people you want to be like. I mean, those good people, those integrity, those loving people, those that's going to really contribute goodness to the world. What are those people you really want to be like? Follow their lead, so that when you get to that point of, when I'm in my late 50s now, I'm knocking on the door 60, that you're already working towards that. Because Theda, as we age, I truly believe that everything that we've done in our life was definitely to prepare us for this time and the loss that we're experiencing. Because as we age, we lose so many.
Yes.
And we're being called on.
Yes. Gene, I saw, I know you were called home to Alaska, but it made me think about, and I went through it in one day, and that isn't how it happens. And that prayer, it just says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And so, like, if it's death, when I was in that ceremony 2 days ago, I was trying to accept something I couldn't change, about a very significant child of mine. And so then I cried. I cried so much it I had to like cough it, cry like that. And then I let her kept doctoring me, and I went through the other part of that prayer is, give me the courage, like you were talking about, Gene, the courage to change the things I can. And then, but the last part of it is an accept, have the wisdom to accept. And so for that particular situation, I accepted that I had no control, and I went to the worst case scenario. Like I said, well, if it doesn't work out, I accept that she dies. And I got an acceptance, but that isn't what happened. I mean, when we accept the finality of someone not being there, and it's connected to what we were talking about, legacy. When there is a finality, then it is your responsibility to carry the good things on. That's when you accept, and 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 that acceptance. So there's a lot, there's that wisdom to know the difference, and then that the serenity when you can't change things. Like, I didn't turn on the news at all today because I wanted to be peaceful when I was visiting with Eugene. so so I just did rituals of making fire, having good conversations with my elder. I just did like how you went out in the mountain or you went out riding, so that I'd be in a good space. And then I just have this thought, like, I should just do that every day. And I went back to not turning on my phone till after 9 o'clock. Because what I learned during this 140 weeks, if you stare at your phone, it takes longer to get spiritually grounded, because it makes there's a energy of scrolling and taking, that's too much for the human brain to take in. Scrolling and taking in is too much, and it's crazy making, it's chaos junkie making, it's TikTok thinking. And TikTok's cool. I mean, I was just thinking, and then I'm gonna have boundaries, because Gene, like when we're working, we always put our phones away, we don't even look at them. But there should be, like when I'm visiting with the elder, I'm not going to bring out that phone and be staring at my phone. That is so freaking disrespectful.
Mhm.
But then there is a time when you're all sitting at the dinner table and all staring at the phone. I thought, is that the new normal? And then I thought, well, the next date I go on, because on the badass auntie, I kind of like, I want to go on a really nice date. And if that person stares at their phone, I'll never go on another date with them. Anyway, because
Yeah, yeah.
I want a companion. I don't want someone who's staring at their phone. I want them to stare at me and visit with me. Does that make sense, Gene? What you thinking?
Absolutely. I mean, Ruby was like, because we get caught up in that stuff, and then she'll ask me a question or something like that. And if I'm looking at my phone and stuff, she'll go, excuse me, I'm over here. I'm over here. And I'll go, oh, okay. And she, but yeah, I mean, because they want that attention too. It's like, something before we close here, Theda,
Yeah.
I do want to talk about, and, and I try not to look at my phone and check out the news until around later in the morning, until around 9 o'clock or so, because I like to sit with Ruby and we have our coffee. And, we'll have some talks here and there. Sometimes we'll just sit and hang. I just know she's having her coffee and I'm having mine. It's just good to just be together. The dogs are good. But I have been lately, the last few days, because during 911,
Oh yeah.
the thing about 911, the event when it happened, people came together.
Yes.
And, and they supported each other, and they loved each other, had compassion, empathy for each other, and dropped tears, and, and that people came together. There's an incident that happened in the NFL with a football player,
Yeah.
Damar Hamlin, and he's still in critical condition. But it's people have come together. It doesn't matter if they're white, black, red, yellow, but people have come together, over this, and which is a beautiful thing. The many prayers, again, if you pray, then pray. And so many people are praying for this young man, and in his health and his wellness, what happened there. And so there's And part of it too is I had a discussion with a friend of mine, and we talked about this. Um, but part of it too is Theta, is that how it's affected a lot of people.
Mhm.
But a lot of people were affected also, I think, was by the tears of grown men. Because on the television, when they're showing that, these football players who are these tough, strong, considered warriors, you know, were visibly shaken and weeping. And the tears of men,
Mhm. Mhm.
when men cry,
Yeah.
and that, and so I was like thinking about that too, about that health, that one. And then we were looking at some of those men, they wanted to cry, but they were held it so tight inside of them that they just held it and suppressed it. But you can see in their eyes and in their face that they want to be able to express and release. And I see so many of our men out there like that. So
Mm.
many men. But it's like, and I was even thinking of actually doing a workshop or a training and titling that "When Men Cry."
Yes, do it,
You,
do it, Gene.
you
Do
know,
it.
and
Gene. Mhm.
and so, anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. I know we're running on time, but about how that event for this young man, I pray that he recovers and is healthy and well, that he can sit up and talk to us and say, tell us all about his experience. I totally pray about that. But
Yeah.
the thing about it, it's bringing people together. He had, that TikTok, or not the TikTok, he had a charity out there he wanted to raise only $2,500 for toys for kids. Now it's raised over like $6 million. Because people are listening, people are coming together, and I love that. And how I just want that to continue,
Yeah.
you know?
No, Gene, I think you hit the nail on the head about us coming together. And because when I heard the news, I just started praying because they said they gave him CPR immediately
Yeah.
because you want to get because the heart stops with a blunt trauma like that. And then they got that defibrillator
Yeah.
on him really quick. So I just been praying that it got, and that this is actually another gift to all of America and all of us and all of the men and all of the wives and the girlfriends are the same
And the
sex,
moms and the
and
moms.
the moms and I just I think that could be the prayer. And then I thought to myself, I want to learn how to work one of those machines because I see them in the airports all the time.
Yeah.
I want, because I'm quick when I have to move quick. I want to get the oxygen to their brain, but what you were saying, this coming together, I think if we notice, and it's about noticing, it's the gathering of people has been loving, has been forgiving, has been rejoiceful. I just by the hugging, the first hugs, just by what the exchange of how are you, the gifting of story. And then so we have to take the cotton out of our ears and put it in our mouth. It's another healing saying, take the cotton out of your ears and just listen to their story.
Mm.
The best thing you can do is listen to someone's story, what happened in this last 140 weeks. And, we want to invite you tomorrow. Native Wellness Institute is doing online. It's free, you guys. It's called The New Year, The New You. And you can just go to our site and sign up. I don't know. Jolene said we might have close to 300 people already signed up. But you're welcome to join us. And it's almost like, we'll have the rest of our team with us, but just to enjoy. we just need to communicate and bring people together, whether it's talking circle, seminar, or, just like when I saw that and I saw them all on their knee, they all took a knee around his body. I mean, I was going, ooh, this is a football gona. They're having a football gona right on. They all took a knee, and then my own tears. I was just like, oh, Creator, thank you, thank you, thank you. Look at all else drops and you concentrate. And if we do that, if drop all things and concentrate on helping someone else heal.
Yeah, everybody, that collective.
Simple. That's simple, Gene. So what's your last final thoughts and comments? And then I got just a couple, and then we'll zoom off and off the power hour.
I don't know, my last thoughts and comments for today, at least at this time, in this moment here, we're talking about, earlier you're talking about what is the legacy, about how I can work with those who are going to pass it on. And then we continued on with others who are the legacy of addictions or whatever it is, and the courage to transform or to step into that, and even having the courage for everyone come together and have that collective healing, and joining together. And so as I'm thinking about that, is like, I just can't help but thinking about, what is the story that you're telling yourself?
Ooh.
What is that story that you're telling yourself? And what is the story that you want to, you leave behind? And so with that story that you're telling yourself now, is it working for you? What is the story you're telling yourself? Maybe, it's just like, we just need to like turn the page and start a new chapter in your story.
Yes.
And the story of your community, your family, your community, and collectively, even as a country. I mean, as an earth, But what is that story that what is that story you're telling yourself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And turn the page, the blank page, and write it down. What's working and what's not working. And really evaluate, take a look at that. And so yeah, that's about all I have to say for that right now.
Oh, wow, Gene. Yeah. And as you're listening to Uncle Gene and Auntie Theda, it's like that blank page is 2023. And we can be, I'm just going to be intentional about sitting, eating, and drinking tea. I'm more of a tea, it's okay if you drink coffee, but I just like having a cup of tea. And so with that, I hope all of you out there, I hope that NWI can have a cup of tea with you.
Yeah.
That we look forward to, when it's real hot and you're like, you got to let it cool just a little. We look forward to that. And so I'm really looking forward to, this is Wellness Wednesday. We're here Pacific time, noon, 1:00 Mountain Time, and we'll just be on with positive, productive, and proactive kind of thoughts. And so Gene and I love you, Gene. I mean, I look forward to when we could just visit like this and share it with others.
And
So,
I don't want to encourage, I want to encourage others to sit with each other and visit and have a conversation like this, because this conversation I just had with Theda, and that you're listening in on, is, it sparks more of who I am, and gives me more courage. Instead of just sitting with myself, I need to speak it. I need to talk it out. I need to share it. So I want to encourage all you out there, just find someone just to sit and drink a cup of coffee or a tea or hot chocolate, or just to sit around and have a conversation.
Or write a letter, drop a card, drop an email, however you want to communicate different. I like the face to face, even though we're not there. I was just going, geez, I'm kind of see. We're kind of you can.
It's 14 hours.
But with that, we thank you, and we'll be signing off, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Or maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh yeah, it comes right on. We'll see you tomorrow, and hopefully we won't be wearing the same clothes. No.
I can't guarantee that.
Okay, thank you from Native Wellness Institute, Wellness Wednesday. We'll see you next week.
All right.